Welcome back to the podcast, Gabe.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's recap for the audience. It was March of 2015 when you were on the first time. That was episode number 11. Actually, this is going to be episode 511.
Wow. Perfect.
We nailed it.
I'm so happy about that.
See, I'm a mad genius in my planning.
I love it.
No, not at all. We talked about some interesting things last time. And for the audience, you can go back to episode 511 and, you can go back to episode 11 and check it out. I'll include a link in the show notes. But we talked about, at that time, you were just dipping your toes into 25th Street.
Yeah.
So let's kind of set the stage for where you're at today. What is your day-to-day like? What is your role? You are at 25th Street in Oakland, which is a fantastic place and a place very central to our recording community here in the Bay Area, I would say. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was told I could give myself any title, so I've given myself chief engineer title.
I would agree.
Just because of context. I'm mostly, I'm there a lot, even on days where I don't have things booked, or I usually have something to do. So I do most of the big tracking sessions over there. I do a lot of overdubs. Anything that's high profile or something that I'm worried about, if I'm worried about how it'll go, if I'm not there, I'll try to be there, at least for part of it. I pretty much mentor everyone in the building, mostly because I have more experience than most of the people there. So there's a lot of questions, and I really actually don't mind answering questions. It reminds me of how much information I have in my brain, which is hard to remember sometimes. Yeah, I think of myself as like the day manager, kind of like problems arise or if something is broken. If I think I can fix it, I'll fix it. If I can't, I can't. It's been kind of a journey to get, it's been, 8 years now? Probably maybe a little bit longer than that. I think I must have, because I think I've been kind of going there for about 10 years. I lose track. My sense of time is wacky. I don't really, I think I told people I had been there for 4 years. I think I told people that probably for 6. So it's hard for me to keep track.
You just keep the same number of years in the conversation.
Yeah.
Nobody asks.
No.
Oh, 4 years still, huh? Wow. What was that, like 10 years ago? So the crew over there's not that big of a crew.
No.
It's pretty small.
Yeah. We only have 2 rooms.
Right.
But me and Jeff are kind of, Jeff Colheedy, who's also been on your program. He's the other main engineer. He spends a fair amount of time doing stuff at his house. Or he's been actually going over to Opus a little bit more because we've been really busy. And so, if you're at a place and you're not around a lot, you don't always get all the work for whatever reason. Me and Jeff, and then Karishma, Reggie, and Colin being the greenest. But they're a good crew. Everyone's enthusiastic and hardworking and has some integrity.
Yeah. Yeah. I've worked with Karishma before, and she was great.
Mm-hmm.
John, who has also been on the show, and I'll include links in the show notes to Jeff and John. John is the primary manager of the facility, but he lives in Sacramento now. Yeah. So it seems appropriate that you're kind of the day manager.
He refers to himself as the general manager a lot.
Ah.
Yeah. So he ends up doing a lot of like building stuff or like larger picture stuff, looks after the finances and replaces air conditioners and those kinds of things. Or if there's painting that needs being done, or a repair to the building that needs being done, or something new idea that we have, or something like that, then he's the one who spearheads most of that. We have a handyman now too.
Yeah, I heard you mention the handyman the other day.
Yeah, he's Rick. He's awesome.
Handyman Rick, yeah. The studio remains really quite busy from everything like I hear you say, or just, general inquiry about how things are going. How much of that do you work?
A fair amount of it. Basically when I started there, I started at the bottom. Me and Peter Laberton, who's also hired there. He's in LA now. Me and Peter were hired kind of around the same time, and Scott Bergstrom was still there. I think it was just the three of us for a while. And John was engineering a bit more then too. So I think it was just four of us for a minute. My point is that I've amassed a fairly large client base now because I wasn't saying no to anything. Once you kind of get your pinky into that studio, I was not about to like screw something up or say no to anything because I didn't want to be, pushed out or screw something up, so I couldn't go there anymore. So I ended up taking pretty much every session that was given to me. And so and I'd already been, engineering for 18 years or something by then. I had to really, I guess, swallow my pride or check my ego and help and like start assisting again, basically. So I was doing some sessions, but there were sessions that, Scott, we have outside engineers come in and Scott was like, I don't really want to do that anymore. And I'm just like, hey, I'll do it. I don't care who it is or what it is. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Which was actually kind of a neat road to be on because I always called it session support to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
But it's basically assisting, but I kind of did it in a way where I felt like I kind of used the service industry kind of vibe, or like making sure everyone's comfortable, have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
If they have trouble with something, I can explain something to them. Or I basically started assisting all these great engineers. We had like Carl Dörfler coming in, and Michael Rosen, and
Joe Ciccarelli.
Joe Ciccarelli, spent a fair amount of time with him. Jim Gaines, James T. Hill. He did a bunch of like a wall voodoo stuff. He's a really good engineer. We had you in.
That's right.
The M80 thing.
The MX80 sound
MX80,
thing that ultimately Steve Albini had mixed.
That's right.
That was a crazy session.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of feel like I went through a PhD program a little bit. Like I learned things I never would have learned if I hadn't sat in with all those insanely good engineers and just seeing how they navigate the clients. And actually, mostly it was how they made things sound in the room that I'm in all the time. And the most profound one is probably Ciccarelli, where we'd spend, for Oxbow, we'd spend like 8 hours setting up a 3-piece. A lot of it's checking phase and moving microphones a little bit, or retuning drums, or swapping out things. But it's a long setup.
I'll comment on that. It's almost like, in the construction world, as they say, measure twice, cut once. Joe's the type of guy that like, he puts the work in up front to make sure that it's going to sound really good. He doesn't just haphazardly throw it together.
Right. Well, it will sound good no matter who brings it up. Like you could send it off to anybody and they put the faders up. And there were times where Joe had to leave. Like we had like 5 or 6 days booked, and in the middle he had to take off, do something else.
Right.
And then I would sit in there doing guitars with Nico. And that was, so those moments, especially having him in the room, every time he leaves, I feel like inspired. Like I hear things differently, at least short term. It doesn't last. It's kind of a fleeting thing, but hearing what he does in that room. And it's funny because you can tell through the day, you can hear the mix of what he's doing change a little bit. And in my head, that makes me think that even though he spent all that time making sure everything sounded great, still could hear things that were wrong, and he would, adjust the mix accordingly. So I'm not sure what the lesson there is, but we are all collectively damaged enough to know that we're not nearly done, no matter how much time we spend on it, I guess.
Well, and it's also fascinating to see how someone utilizes a space, as you say, that you use every day.
Yeah.
And when somebody like Joe comes in, or Carl Dörfler, you're going to learn something because they are going to look at the situation completely differently.
Oh, yeah.
Because you get trapped into this like, well, I always put the drums here.
Yeah.
And they come in and they're like, oh, yeah. They flip the script and move the drums to a place you're like, what?
Yeah.
Nobody puts the drums there.
Walking around the room clapping, looking for that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've recorded there not a lot, but a few times, and have always thought, oh, well, you put the drums out in the large room. I walked in the other day to pay a visit on a session that Adam Munoz, who's been on the show, I'll put a link in the show notes, Adam had some sounds going that I had never heard come out of there, or wasn't paying attention to.
Yeah.
And I sat back on the couch and I just listened, and I was like listening to the trumpet in particular and was just stunned. I was like, wow, that sounds like it's like got this broadcasty, smooth, compressed sound to it. And between takes, I was like, Adam, what are you compressing the trumpet with? Nothing. No EQ, no compression, just a 4038. And I was like, oh, right. That would explain the smooth top end to the trumpet. Duh. And then also how the drums sounded in the booth. And for the audience that's never been there, I'll link to 25th Street. You can look at the pictures. They're amazing. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is.
One of the great studios we have here in the Bay Area. That studio, that experience of working there, if I recall our conversation from episode 11, that came at a great time because you had had a car accident where you had passed out in the car and woke up, and fortunately nobody was hurt. And I know everybody's like, oh my God, now I have to listen to episode 11. And then I think you took some time off.
I didn't engineer before I got into that car accident. I had been, not engineering for like almost a year. I had a couple of weekend sessions here and there, but not very much. And then as soon as the car crash happened, it took about a month and I didn't really do anything. I couldn't really do too much. It was a lot of tests and stuff. I couldn't drive, which means it was hard for me to get places. I was taking taking the BART and bus to Decibel from Lake Merritt. Takes about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half of public transportation. I did that a bunch. As I started to get into 25th Street more, it couldn't have been more perfect. And it's funny because I've had people who have come in, when they get their keys and they hang out more, and they say exactly the same thing to me that I would say to John. If there's anything that I'm doing wrong, let me know so that I don't screw it up because I don't want to leave here. But it was perfect. It was perfect. Like I've never lived very far away, and I was always available. So it was a perfect situation because I didn't have anything else to do.
Well, it's a very comfortable studio to be in. Just the aesthetics of it, the sunlight, the openness. You don't feel crammed in and overheated or overcooled.
Yeah,
it's a great spot. In your time taking on essentially this house position, there's pros and cons to that from my perspective, and I'm curious to hear your perspective. From my perspective, I'm 100% freelance. I don't have what you've got.
Right.
And the pros of that are I could do whatever the hell I want, whenever the hell I want. Mm-hmm. The cons are the pay fluctuates.
Right.
You, on the other hand, have a fairly consistent pay, consistent work, but you're kind of tied to the place.
Yeah.
So what's your perspective on that? And does that fit with where you're at in your life?
The pros are that I get to work on a lot of different types of music. In fact, at the one of those audio nerd listening things that we do sometimes, I feel like that I should make a medley of all the stuff that I had done for the month previous, so people could understand kind of the schizophrenic nature of my work. I'll get kind of lots of jazz, a fair amount of jazz, and then I'll have a little bit of like, I've been doing all these like kind of ambient-ish, meditative sound healing records with, be like a handpan or a hung, and then like chimes, and as this one woman that I record her swinging around feathers and weird, ancient flutes or singing bowls or all kinds of crazy weird instruments that I have to figure out how to record and make them sound good, which is tricky. Or mixing Residence records, which tend to be really, into left field. This last record has lots of strings and orchestral kind of stuff, so it's hard to mix because there's nothing traditional about it. Mm-hmm. And then I have straight traditional, like, rock bands and some kind of country-ish bands or Americana bands.
Singer-songwriters.
Singer-songwriter. I don't really have a lot of metal or reggae, which is kind of a bummer. I wouldn't mind working on some of those records, but those are the pros. I get to work on all kinds of fun stuff. The cons are sometimes I have to work on things that I'm not crazy about. I've been doing it long enough so that I really appreciate good musicians. And when I don't have good musicians, it becomes harder. And as I'm listening to the take, I'm not thinking, wow, this is great. This sounds great. This is awesome. This band's all I'm thinking about. Okay, I got to fix that. I'm going to have to fix that. I have to fix that. How am I going to fix that? It's a lot of, either the drums or the singer or the guitar player. Someone's not, up to snuff or whatever. Those could be a little hard.
Being the house guy, like some people will perceive your role differently coming in. Some people look at you as, you're the house guy. Some people look at you as an ally and part of the team. I'm sure that fluctuates depending on what the agenda of the project is. And I guess you also have to temper your expectations of things you might get excited by. Some people may be like, I don't know, we're gonna wrap it up at our place,
or so and so is gonna take this. My workload has been mostly tracking. I do a lot of tracking. I do a fair amount of mixing as well. I don't do as many, hey, I have these tracks, can you mix them, gigs. I would like more of those. Or, I didn't track this, but can you mix it? I mix some stuff that I record, and occasionally I'll record things that I've maybe have done overdubs on. And I do have a few projects where I record, mix, and master everything. I do have those. I have some of those. Even the stuff I'm excited about, I'm okay with it leaving, because often I have other things I got to do anyway. So,
I would imagine that you almost have to take a bit of Steve Albini's approach. It's just like, you're coming in, I'm providing a service, I'm taking care of you, I will do it to the best of my ability.
Anyway, it was like that for a long time. I feel like now I've built enough of a name for myself where I'm now getting people who are like, oh, so-and-so recommended me, and I'll have remembered that person. I have had those things where like, oh, so-and-so said I should come over, and I was like, I don't remember who that is, but great. I mean, I do a lot of sessions, hard to remember everybody. Yeah, so I've been getting more of those lately, but someone recommended me specifically. I'm getting a fair amount of those. I try to treat it as a service. I try to keep it kind of light. I try not to say no to anybody. I want people to like to work with me. I try not to be that grumpy engineer guy. I am occasionally, and if I have been that way to anybody, I apologize. But, sometimes if you haven't had enough sleep or enough food and people are asking for something that I might think is not maybe what we should be doing at the time, I can get a little testy sometimes.
Well, so that all is leading right to my next question, which is you have eons of experience. So you can clearly see what others can't in their own music and what's possible or what's wrong. It's almost like you have to figure out, am I going to interject? Am I going to make a suggestion that they fix this out of tune thing? Or
if something's out of tune, I often don't really say anything. I just tune it. Like if someone's sending me a song to mix, I don't rarely discuss whether or not the vocal needs to be tuned. I'm just going to throw it into the tuning machine and see where it is. Because sometimes people miss things, or I'll hear something and be like, oh, wait a second. Maybe this hasn't been tuned. I really like fixing tracks. That's one of my favorite things, actually. I haven't done it in a while, but I like taking a track that was recorded very poorly and making something compelling out of it. That's my favorite thing to do.
That seems to be the story of my life.
Yeah. Especially things that other people have tried to make sound quote unquote good.
Yeah.
Those are my favorites because the expectations are really low and the bar's really low.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like freak it out a little bit and do something that they wouldn't expect. And if it doesn't work, whatever, it's fine.
The bar's already low anyway.
Yeah, it's already messed up. Who cares? But I don't really get too much of those anymore. I wish I did.
I'm not trying to throw any shade here on any of our peers or colleagues or anybody like that, but I always laugh like when sometimes when you see some of the mix with the masters or pure mix things and you hear the tracks that somebody gets to mix.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, well, duh.
Yeah.
If I had that every time, I could probably knock it out of the park. But a lot of stuff some of us get, and I'm sure there's a ton of people watching, listening, who feel this way where they get subpar tracks, poorly recorded, poorly played, poor, half-assed performances, and you got to make something magical out of something that isn't magical.
Yeah. If you get a track that's really well recorded, sometimes it's harder to mix that. You don't really know what to do. Like, I should be doing something, right?
Right. There's no doubt where we live is pretty pricey.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're keeping your head above the water?
No.
No.
I mean, so the deal is like, being at the studio, I'm on staff there, but I'm an independent contractor.
Okay.
And my pay comes out of the rate that we have at the studio.
Right.
So I'm not paid separately by the client. I'm paid by the studio. I've kind of hit the ceiling. I mean, the harder I work, the more I make, but I still not quite enough. It's always a struggle, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I work as much as I do. And then at the end of the month, I'm like, wait a second. I do have good months. Sometimes if I have some mixing projects, I can do pretty well. Life is a sponge. It all gets sucked up from somewhere.
Does that present potential conflicts with the studio, like doing outside mixing for people?
I don't do that much off-book mixing, as I like to call it.
Okay.
But, if I'm there and I'm not making money for the studio, I try to, as much as I can, to balance it out with like maybe doing some maintenance or answering the phones or answering the door or looking after the parking lot. I try to do things that I might do if I was being paid to be like the manager during the day. I try to kind of keep an eye on stuff. And if I'm there and if I'm in Studio B and there's a session in Studio A, guaranteed at least once I'll be called into the room because someone's having a problem. I think it works out. I don't know. No one said anything yet. Maybe if once they hear this, they'll be like, yo, but until then, but it definitely helps me. If I can just charge someone a flat rate to mix a song and I can fit it into the cracks of my schedule.
Do you see like a point in your life when A, would you leave the Bay Area? B, would you foresee leaving 25th Street or doing some other kind of audio gig? Or like, have you toyed with any ideas or?
I've definitely.
I don't want to get you in trouble with John.
Yeah, no.
So John, if you're watching or listening to this, you can't hold Gabe,
I definitely have had those moments where I'm like, I'll see John and be like, hey man, I think I need to do something different. I don't know what it is, but because I get burnt out. I'm like, I work too much.
Right.
So it's hard sometimes. Like today, I'm not going to work at all because I just can't. I can't. I don't want to sit there and I don't know. I have things to do, but I'd rather just go home. I'm just go home and cook. I think I've been cooking a lot. It's been helping. It helps the stress. Actually, just baking or cooking stuff. I feel like I need to go to some other level or find some new chapter, but I don't know what that is yet. I've been really working on, I don't know how to explain this. I feel like I'm trying to up my game as far as like tracking stuff and also mixing. I've been trying to slowly building a machine to mix, like figuring out a good workflow for myself in Pro Tools that I can get tracks and then import, some sort of structure to it and route everything and have it be okay.
Yeah.
I've felt like there's a style of modern mixing that I don't know how to do. I came up in the mid 90s where parallel compression wasn't as much of a thing. I think back then people would refer to it as a New York compression. I think I heard some people say. I've used parallel compression on my drums for a while now, but more recently I've been getting into more like parallel compressing other things in the mix. It's almost like potato chips. You can't just eat one, you got to eat them all. Kind of. So I've definitely been trying to up my game as far as like the end product, I guess.
What are the things when we say that you're burning out and you're working too much? Is it just like the back-to-back days of like being in the studio, being hit with sound and sitting a lot? Like, what is it that burns you out specifically?
I think it's decision fatigue. I think that's what it really is. Like, because if I'm bringing up a song, I'm making 20 decisions within the first minute and a half or something, like trying to decide, well, what does this song need? How am I going to mix it? How many tracks are there? What am I going to do with all these compressors, EQs? And then when I'm tracking, it's the same thing. Like people are asking, oh, is that take good? Is this take good? How can we fix this? How can we fix that? It's just a lot of decisions to make. And then I get home and then people ask me, what do you want for dinner? I'm just like, can I just eat toast?
Somebody else please produce the meal.
So, that's I think that's part of it. It's just the decision. But also there's someone asking you constantly for something. Either it's the client is asking you, I know we have 20 minutes left, but can we record a guitar real quick? I know it's a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy towards decision-making and doing the work, I guess.
Yeah.
Once I'm in doing the work, I get pretty well focused, and if it's something that's fun, the time goes by really fast, and before I know it, it's 8:00 and time to go home.
I always fondly look at some of this corporate audio stuff or even podcasting stuff, not my podcast, but others that I've done, as it like the simpler the audio gets sometimes, the more money is involved.
Yeah.
And the less hassle there is.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered anything in that direction?
Not really. In fact, so now I don't really, if we get inquiries about audiobooks or voiceovers, I always pass those on to someone else.
Yeah.
After my son was born, this would have been in early 2002, probably. I worked for a couple of weeks for a company. We're developing voice models for speech recognition. Speech recognition. They had this computer that had like a program on it that had a bunch of they were kind of like hypercards, or like there were cards that have different words on them, and they had a TV remote hooked up to it, and you push a button on the remote and it would change the word, or it would record the word that you said and then change the card. You push the button and say the word springtime and then let go of the button, and it will have made a small sound file on the computer, store it, and then it would go to the next card. And then somebody in the company would take all those recordings and then put them in a program and turn them into algorithms for speech recognition. So they had 4 Genelecs in the room with a DA88. Actually, I think it was a PCM 800. It was a Sony PCM 800. And multi-track. They had recorded ambience at people's houses. So they had taken some 4011s and some, probably from Jarvis, some 4011s and some GMLs or something. And
sorry, Stephen Jarvis's audience is a friend of ours who is known in the Bay Area for renting high-end gear. Would you say?
For like 40 years,
yeah,
or something, forever. Yeah.
He'll be on this show at some point.
He has probably he's sold some of it now, but his collection is ridiculous. High-end pro audio, like vintage, new, everything.
Yeah.
So good. So they were playing back this ambience in this little, they had it in a mobile home, this setup. So you could sit on a couch with the ambience of this random house playing. And so you'd have a little bit of noise in your data. So it could deal with noise while you were trying to talk into your remote control. And that job kind of sucked my soul out of my body. I hated going to the same place every day and working exactly the same hours, doing exactly the same thing over and over again. I don't think I have many sessions longer than like 4 or 5 days, but when you get to the end of that 5th day, you're just like, oh God, this is almost over. I want to do something different. Yeah, I don't think I could survive in that world.
That really wasn't where I was going with that. That's a level of intensity that I appreciate, that I can talk into my Comcast remote and tell it where to go.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to do the audio gig that helped build that model. what I'm referring to, you alluded to it, audiobooks, although audiobook editing is a nightmare. But honestly, like just general podcasting, I think is very, the simplicity of that is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, if I was given an opportunity, I would probably, I think I could probably produce a podcast, but I don't really know. I haven't tried it. I probably could do it.
Yeah. There's not very much. Was that a good take?
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like capturing a performance and then just making the performance sound good.
Right. I mean, I would be willing to try it, but
yeah,
especially if the money was tasty.
Tasty money. If you didn't do audio, what would you do?
I don't know. That's why I do audio, because I have no idea. That's kind of a crossroads I kind of came across after the car crash. You're like, well, now would be a perfect opportunity to do something different. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I don't know how to do anything else. What else can I do? I mean, I guess the dream job would be like a consultant, where I could just tell people what I know and get paid more than I would for doing that thing.
There's a lot of those out there.
That's the job I have in my 60s, I guess. It's not too far away, I guess, but I should get on it.
It must be difficult though, because I mean, if you feel sometimes overworked and you're spending a lot of time in a studio environment, do you still have the inspiration to read about it, research it, look into, what's so-and-so doing on this mix? Like, do you spend any time like listening to music, watching YouTube videos on music production, or reading about it?
I listen to a fair amount of music. I mean, I obviously listen to a lot of the stuff that I ended up working on just to check it and stuff. But I do enjoy listening to music. Often it'll be things that I've been listening to for years. It's more like a comfort thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had a hard time with listening to people talk about or watching, like everyone was like, oh, you should watch the Pensado's place. And I feel like so much of like the techniques that we end up using, a lot of them are contextual. They may not work in the situation I'm in. You know what I mean? Like it's way more useful for me to watch somebody do something in real time than it would be to have someone talk about it. Sometimes I'll listen to a podcast, or I'll watch a video, and one little thing will be like, oh, that's cool. But it doesn't happen every time. So I don't have the motivation to do a lot of that. And sometimes it feels like some of the things that I see online are a little clickbaity, or like I'll watch the video and I'm like, that's not really true. Like you're just kind of exaggerating that so you can put that in your video. I don't believe it. I do try to keep it fresh though. I do try to learn about other things if I can. I think for a minute I was investigating drum replacement plugins and it was drum gates. I saw a little video about a drum gate. I thought, oh, that looks kind of neat. And I kind of poked around a little bit more. And I'll do that occasionally with certain kinds of plugins. If there's actually the latest one I was kind of poking around about was clipping plugins for mastering. And John Kunerberty is the other engineer that actually comes in a fair amount. Yeah. And I've become pretty friendly with. And he was suggesting a gold clip, which you can, for $25 a month, you can rent to own it. It's not that expensive of a plugin, but it's like $25 a month. They just charge you. You can stop whenever you want. It's pretty cool.
How expensive is it?
I think it might be $200 or something, $250. It's not crazy, but I figured if I like it, great. If I don't, I'll just stop paying for it. But so far it's pretty cool. I hadn't really used a clipper previous to this, but it's a neat thing.
Yeah. I think my tolerance of cost of certain plugins varies. Like I'll look at something, and if I see the value in it, I'm like, okay, it might be a little pricey, but I think for what it's doing, I'm okay with that. But some things I'm just kind of like, how much do you want for a compressor plugin?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I know the reverbs are the one that gets me. I'm like, I really want that reverb, but $400.
I will say the one on the higher end of the price range, Altiverb, which I own. I don't own the XL version. That's been a plugin that I've been happy with and not regretting the purchase because it gets used. I like the sounds. They keep giving you new rooms. So paying a little extra for something like that, I'm okay with. And especially now I feel like I need to upgrade because there's an Atmos version or equipped version of it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if they had that. Yeah,
I need to look into.
By the way, I wish that company also makes a plugin called Speakerphone.
I know.
Talk about an expensive plugin. If I had all the money in the world, I would buy a Speakerphone. I would only use it probably for resonance mixes.
I know.
But man, that's such a cool plugin.
Yeah, I think the only other person I've heard talk about that is Chad Blake. And that makes total sense coming from Chad.
Totally. Yeah.
That he would get into it. But just watching the demo of the guy from Audio Ease explain it, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Very cool. Like, I think for sound design purposes, it's fantastic.
So awesome.
What inspires you? What keeps you going?
I think I like helping people. I was complaining earlier about people not being good musicians, but I definitely find myself, try to be encouraging or try to make someone comfortable enough. Like, especially if I have someone who hasn't sung a lot in the studio, and you can tell they're standing in the booth, they got their hands in their pockets, and they're like they're not real. You could tell that by their body language or just kind of how they're holding themselves, that they're nervous. Because at the studio we've got this window that's from the floor. It's probably an 8-foot window, so it's just a giant window, and it's totally exposed. This person just standing there about to sing, and I know that can be difficult for people. So I try to lighten it up or to say, hey, I'm not judging you, so don't worry about it. I'm just here to document this, even though I am totally judging them. But just trying to make someone feel more comfortable, or putting a blanket up so we can't see them, or turning them, or putting them across the room, whatever. I'm really into that kind of level of service. Like I was saying earlier, I like helping people achieve their art, I guess. If it means taking a song that has a solo 15 clicks faster than the rest of the song I'm cutting into, I'm totally willing to try that and see if it. That's why I say I try not to say no, and if I can think of a way I can do it, I can say, well, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll just undo it. But let's try it. And the one that I did, it totally worked. It's funny. I have people that are, fans of my drum sounds. I have people that are fans of my editing. I have people that are fans of different aspects of the things that I do just because I've done them on their sessions. And that's kind of fun. We all spend a lot of time kind of in sort of a vacuum, even if you're working with other people. It can be kind of lonely being an engineer because you spend a lot of time. You might spend a lot of time with somebody, but the next day you're somebody completely different. There's no continuation of a conversation. Or if I do see that person again, it might be 4 months. Having that connection with people when I can is important.
Is that difficult because every day it's like starting the conversation, starting everything from scratch again? It's like
telling the same stories over and over again. It gets a little draggy,
but also just you have to start a new relationship every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's start from scratch and build the relationship over the course of the day, and then I won't see you tomorrow.
Right.
And I'll start this all over again.
Yeah, we'll be good friends by the end of the day, and then I won't see you for 6 months.
Right.
That's not uncommon. I do have some regulars that I see a few times a month.
Yeah.
But I do have some of those, and those are always really fun. So I guess that that part of it really is fun. Working with people like my regulars that I have that seem to just just always want to record or mix. Once we're done mixing something, the next session we start tracking more songs.
That familiarity with the repeat clients, especially the ones that you really vibe with. is pretty magical.
Yeah.
They come in, it's like, hey, okay, we don't have to start the relationship from scratch here. I already have a rapport with you. Mm-hmm. They know the studio, they know the strengths, they know what things they like.
Yeah.
And do you think that in those cases there's less pressure because it becomes more casual because they're more comfortable?
Yeah. Yeah. But even though it's more casual, those clients in particular, we don't really, we'll goof around sometimes, but when we're working, we work really fast.
Yeah.
Like we just get stuff done. But in a way that's not like full of pressure or like stress. It's all very, very light, and because the musicianship is good, attitudes are good, music is good. It's just a fun time.
So there's a lot of studio owners who listen to the show. What have been the lessons you've learned about running a studio? Because while you may not be the general manager like John, you still have a very large decision-making role in that place. Mm-hmm. So after this much time spent there, what have you learned? What are the key things that people need to keep in mind when running a studio to have it be successful?
Mm-hmm. I think the secret of 25th Street is, and part of it is the space. A lot of people come to 25th Street because of the room, not necessarily because of who's working there. Maybe not as much true as it used to be, but I feel like for a while, like it really didn't matter that any of us were there. It could be anybody there. I have a slightly different feel about that now, obviously, but having a studio that's clean and everything works. Those are easy things to say, but to have a place that people feel comfortable in, and so which means not having dishes in the sink, and it's something it's a fight every day. People taking stuff out, not putting it back. It's it's common studio stuff. Clean place, bottomless coffee, working gear. If it isn't working, it gets pulled out. The problem with all those things is that if you don't have the money to do those things, then it's harder to get the clients to make the money to do those things. So it helps to have someone who owns a studio that has a little cash, just in case doesn't go as well as you hope it does. But yeah, running a studio that size, for me, I don't really see, my vision only goes so far. So for me, it's like, I just try to keep things clean and keep things working and make everyone as comfortable as possible. If someone's causing problems, a client causes problems, or there's an issue, trying to deal with that, I do have John for that. He's 100% happy to be the bad guy in a situation. So
which is funny because John is like the sweetest guy on the planet, but he really knows if he needs to be the bad guy, how to do it.
And also, I can also say, well, you can talk to John about this, but this is probably what's going to happen. And sometimes I don't even have to go to him. I just have to threaten the idea that someone else is opposed to it, and then I can move on. But running a studio like this size is, it would be interesting to now move to a smaller, more intimate studio, because I wonder how what I know now would translate. I'm not really sure. But for me, like I said, my vision is somewhat limited, so I just kind of do what I think the studio needs. And sometimes it's having a big event for the AES, or sometimes it's like a week from Sunday. It's like a club from SF State, like a multimedia club coming in to do a tour. We have classes come in, or I had a class from some school up near Ukiah, I think. I can't remember I forget what school that was. But they came in and did a tour. I spent like 2 hours with them, just like answering questions mostly. I enjoy those. I enjoy the slight educational stuff. I have a lot of knowledge. I'm happy to share it. But my point with that was that it's a community. You're bringing in community people. If it's students, or if it's, and sometimes that stuff doesn't make money, but in the long run, it kind of helps the vibe of the studio. Like everyone, and more people know about it. That's another thing. Like, person that's cutting your hair. Oh, I work at a recording studio. Here's my card. You never know. That's the things I've learned.
The community aspect that you mentioned, I think, I think I said it earlier. 25th Street has become a hub because you guys have been so good about AES events, Christmas parties, Bay Area audio nerds meeting up there. For God's sake, you guys like hosted my 50th birthday party.
Yeah.
Like the things you guys have done, I think are so critical and make everybody feel a part. And I think that recording studios, the potential problem that they face is they can stink of exclusivity. And I've seen it. I've experienced it. I don't like it. And when I encounter it, I don't want to support those people because they just think that they're the smartest people in the room. And to me, the way 25th Street has been run is just brilliant.
It's the best advertisement. The amount of money that you spend hosting an event is way better than like a Facebook ad.
Completely.
The connection is really strong with people. People are really appreciative, especially the people who are like really young people or like in schools and stuff. Like when they walk in and they're like, holy, like, oh my God, look at this place. And then you start describing some of the stuff. I go, this floor's floated on springs. And like they can't even believe, you know what I mean?
I'll give you an example, dating back quite some time ago. So for the audience, we're at my house and we've got 1, 2, 3, I think we got like 3 or 4 Google Home screens, some of the old screens. And there's pictures that cycle through on some of the units. One of the ones that consistently comes up is when my oldest son was a Cub Scout. I was the den leader. And there's a picture in the control room of you with all these Cub Scouts in their little uniforms. Oh. And I just think, A, that was a long time ago. B, like how cool is that to get exposure? Whereas some places are just like, I think they have their heads so far up their ass. And as I said, they think they're the smartest people in the room that they don't engage with the community on that level. And I think that's probably one of the most important things you guys have done. So, but it's funny too, when you mention the small room concept, how would it work? And I keep going back to when I had a studio on 61st Street in Emeryville, small, essentially 1.5 room place. There's a brilliance in a small space like that. It's manageable from an overhead perspective. I think a lot of people find themselves in small rooms wanting to bust out and grow. And having done that, and now coming back to the thought of even having a small room, it's like, oh, that'd be like a cakewalk.
Yeah. Having had this last year and a half training all these newer people, sometimes I try to get people to try to get them in on higher profile sessions where the stakes are higher so that they can feel that energy of a higher stakes session. Like we've had Taj Mahal in a fair amount of times and some other kind of, Los Tigres del Norte. And having greener people on those sessions can show them like, this is what you have to get used to. Like, this is the kind of pressure, and I don't even really feel it anymore. It's like, whatever. I don't care who's here. Let's just do the thing. But when you're not used to that pressure, it could be a little bit much. But once you start doing those, or like another good example is like a 22-piece big band. We do a fair amount of big bands now because fantasy isn't around. There aren't many other places people can do big bands properly. Doing a 22-piece band and then going back to the piano trio. Suddenly that piano trio was like, oh, this is so easy because you had to manage 22 people with drums and horns and pianos and guitars and vibes and whatever.
And there's people from Abbey Road listening to this now probably going, oh, I wish I could go back to 22-piece band.
Yeah, I know. Right? 22, that's easy.
Yeah, that's a cakewalk.
But it's fun. I think of sometimes I think of people like Mark Wilshire. He's in London, but he's used to doing these giant orchestras. If I walked in, I'd be like, oh God, I don't think I could do 60-piece orchestra. It seems like a lot. But that kind of perspective is, it's good to show the youngins.
Well, we're about out of time, but I want to thank you for coming over.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the coffee. Oh, absolutely. We'll go make some more coffee, and thanks again. It's I can't believe like 500 episodes ago you were on. That's neat. The strangest feeling to think about that. So, audience, in the show notes, episode 11 that Gabe was originally on, and links to some of the people we mentioned: Jeff Colheedy, John Schimpf, Kuna Birdie. We'll have to put him in there. Yeah. He was actually a very early episode as well. I think he was, I don't know, probably like 15 or 16. I'll have to look it up. Anyways, a lot of people to check out. So please do. And Gabe, thanks again. Yeah, thank you. All right. Take care.